Hello and welcome to the Ourdadsstamps YouTube channel, where we talk about all things related to stamps and stamp collecting. My name's Pete West and I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to get regular updates of new content. Hello again from Ourdadsstamps. And hello once again to Sheila.
Hi everybody.
For today's video, I'm going to be looking at what sells on eBay. During the last couple of weeks, I've done some digging around on the eBay website, and I came across a feature that I didn't realise was there. And it took a bit of digging, but it's certainly available to shop owners. Whether it's available to private sellers, I'm not quite sure. But there's a tab called Research. And if you click on that tab, it comes up with quite a lot of interesting information. So I thought I'd share it with you this week. And the first thing you notice when you click on this tab, it gives you a breakdown of what's sold. You can apply all sorts of filters to look at various odd things. And I tried putting in a filter to search for stamps, but that came up with anything that had the word stamp in its title, which included things like handbags and jewellery and stuff. So I had to narrow it down to postage stamps. And I'm aware that it has actually missed a couple of things out, but it does give a pretty good impression of what has been selling in terms of postage stamps. And I narrowed it down further to look at just what's sold in the past month. So we're looking at what's happened in January, basically. And on eBay worldwide, in January, there were 47,782 items sold connected with stamps, which is quite a considerable amount, I think. And it sold for a total of £556,000. Obviously, some of that's been converted from whatever the local currency is, but that makes it each item sold for roughly £11, and that's round about the sort of price I would imagine the average stuff that I sell goes for, maybe even a little bit lower. But I did look at eBay UK as well to see if there was much difference, and obviously the figures are less, but the average price of each item sold is much the same. In actual fact, there was about 11,500 items sold for £155,000. But most of the other figures tie in with eBay UK as eBay worldwide. And if you're interested in this, you can look at eBay by specific country. So you can look at one that's specific for your region if that's what's interesting. I thought I'd look into the figures a little bit deeper than just spouting numbers, because it's more interesting what goes on behind. The first interesting thing I came across, there's various graphs of what sells day by day, and you can look at a graph on the number of items that are selling each day. And unsurprisingly, I think for most people, is that Saturday and Sunday sells almost twice as many items as every other day in the rest of the week. So that means most people are looking over the weekend, I would imagine, or most people set their sales to end over the weekend. I'm not quite sure which one of those two it is. However, the picture on the UK site is not quite as extreme. It is still more sold at the weekend, but nowhere near as much as on the worldwide site. I've experimented with finishing my items at various different days and different times. And being perfectly honest, I haven't really noticed a lot of difference. But maybe that's me, maybe that's the items I'm selling.
I mean, I would have thought, to be honest, a lot of people would probably be scrolling through eBay on their commute to work, maybe their lunch break, maybe on their way home.
Well, yes, that was my thinking as well, that I don't know how many people actually sit on public transport. Maybe a lot of people are actually driving, which means they wouldn't be able to scroll through. But I've also tried timing some of mine to finish around lunchtime, so that they might be scrolling during their lunch at work and things like that. As I said, weekends do seem to be better for sales, but I don't know whether that's because more people finish their stuff at the weekends. It's always been said that Sunday evening is the best time to sell on eBay. Now, is that one of the like self-fulfilling prophecies where because everybody says that's the best time, people make sure that's the time they finish? I'm not convinced.
I think it'd be quite interesting to ask your audience to put in the comments when they look at things like eBay.
Yes, that would be actually.
Interesting to know.
So if you are listening to this and buy regularly on eBay, then maybe you could make a comment of when you look through eBay and when you buy your stuff. But also if you sell on eBay, what do you have a specific time when you always end your items, or is it just random?
I mean, just a quick recap of eBay for people that maybe aren't familiar. If you're going to sell something on eBay, you can put it on as a buy it now price. And then can you set it 5 days from today, 7, 10, or?
There's, as you say, you can do it by auction, and the auction you can set for different categories, so like 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. And with that type of sale, you can arrange it so it ends at a specific time. But if you sell it as a buy it now, which most items seem to be buy it now, and most of my items are buy it now price, it's just on there permanently at that price, and people can make offers if it's allowed, or they just buy at that price. So on that type of auction, there is no end time, if you like.
I guess though, if you're buying and selling on eBay, buy it now as a seller, you would set a price that you feel is the value of your item.
Yeah, I set a price which I'm prepared to sell it for. I generally also leave it open to offers, so if somebody wants to offer a reasonable amount, then I can look at it and maybe accept, maybe not.
And then if you're going to put it on an auction with 5, 7, 10 or whatever days you want to do, you put it on as a start price, and then hopefully that will go up as people show an interest and start bidding.
Yeah, that's always a difficult one, because if you want to sell it, then you put it at a low price and hope it goes up. But that has the danger of nobody bidding on it and it sells for the very low price. You can start them for anything from 99p upwards. So if you've got £1,000 stamp and you put it starting price 99p and nobody bids on it, you've got to sell it, or one person bids on it, you've got to sell it for 99p, which maybe not what you really intended in the first place. So you can set the starting price whatever you want. You can also set a reserve price as well, but that costs extra, so people are generally reluctant to do that.
I think it's probably just good to have a little resume of all the different options if people aren't familiar with how eBay works.
Yeah, certainly. So as I said, the two options, and I use both, and both have their advantages and disadvantages. So it's entirely down not only to personal preference, but also the sort of stamps you're selling. I think I tend to sell the higher value stamps at a fixed price because I know what they're worth and what I want for them. The bulk lots and the lower value stuff, then it's really just to move it on. So if it sells for 99p, it sells for 99p. So where were we? Yes, we were talking about most sales seem to happen at the weekends. But one interesting fact that I come across, which I have no explanation for at all, is there's also a graph on what the average selling price is during the week or the month. And it's fairly consistent, except on a Saturday. Every Saturday the price drops. The average price drops almost by a half. And I can find no explanation for that whatsoever. During the week and on Sunday, most things sell for round about £11, £12, which is what you'd expect. But on a Saturday, they're about £5 or £6. I can think of no explanation for that at all. A good time to buy because everything seems to be going cheaper. But maybe it's because the items aren't so good. I really don't know. It just seems a strange quirk of the statistics. I thought I'd look a bit further and actually go for the big sellers and what is fetching the highest price. And once again, you can filter the results to show the prices from the highest price downwards or the lowest price upwards or the total number of sales, the total number of bids. You can sort it in any way you want. And I sorted it by the highest price sold. And obviously most of these items are an individual item. You rarely see things where they sell 2 or 3 of the same item. And one of the surprising things for me is that featuring in the top 10 highest priced sales, half of them were for a bulk lot of unused stamps, selling a percentage of their face value. And people were spending, well, the second highest seller was 4,000 Australian mint stamps that sold for nearly £2,000. That was half the face value of the stamps, but it just seems strange that people would buy their stamps in this way. And as I said, over half of the high sellers were a similar thing, Australian stamps or American stamps that people could use for postage.
So these are current stamps, they're not old stamps?
Well, the thing is, with most countries, and certainly in America, any mint stamp can be used on postage. So you could put an 1880 stamp on a letter and post it, and it would be accepted. I wouldn't recommend it because you may not see that 1850 stamp again. It is valid, has postal value. That doesn't work for European countries or for places like Great Britain with decimal. So European countries that have adopted the euro, you can't use stuff from their previous currency, obviously, but you can use any other stamp. And in Britain, you can use any stamp post-decimal. So you can use 1970 stamps on a current letter.
To me, that sounds like a great challenge because I don't know how much it costs to send a first-class stamp. So, I don't know, let's say £1.50. So,
Yes.
How do you calculate how many old stamps you need to put on the envelope?
Well, you have to make it up to £1.50. So in the old days, and I'm talking about the UK here, the old days, it cost you threepence to send a local post. I think it's now something like 90p. So you would have to get 30 of the old threepenny stamps on the envelope to make it up to the 90p. But if you did, then that would be valid for the postal system.
Well, I would like to throw out the challenge on somebody to try that in the UK
I have,
and see if that works. I can't believe the post office would allow that for one moment.
I've received items through the post from various stamp sellers that have used old stamps as part of the payment.
And where have those envelopes
from
come
all over Europe? Some from England. They have worked from England. But also I've had some from Belgium, from Italy, from France. I've even had some from Belgium that were actually in francs, and they were put on the envelope. And Belgium obviously uses euros now, so I don't know how they got away with that, but they did.
I think that is absolutely fabulous, and I would love to challenge the Royal Mail to do that. So if any of you listeners fancy taking up the challenge, I think that would be absolutely brilliant.
Yes, yeah. There are stories, particularly quite a few years ago, but people would try and challenge the post office, if you like, to see what they would accept and what they wouldn't accept, and put all sorts of things on there. And there are stories of foreign stamps being used on an English letter and it got through. So yeah, it does depend how alert the postal workers are. And now that it's automated by machines, I guess it's a lot harder, but an interesting thought, maybe one worth trying.
Well, I think we need somebody from, for example, the Royal Mail to come on the podcast and talk about this. I think it'd be a fascinating topic. So if anybody knows anybody's brother-in-law, sister, cousin twice removed who works at Royal Mail, please get in touch.
And has some stories about strange stamps being put on envelopes. Yeah, that would be interesting.
That'd be brilliant,
to see what's actually made it. Anyway, back to the highest sellers. As I said, 5 of the top 10 sellers were just bulk packs of mint stamps that could be used for postage. And the feature of the sale is that they were 50%, 60%, 70% of the face value. So by buying them through eBay, you were saving yourself a lot of money. This particular one from Australia, the face value was $4,800. And I think I looked at that one and it sold for 2,000 Australian dollars. So it was more or less half of the value. I don't know. I can't make up my mind on that, whether it's a good deal or not.
Well, I think this is like bulk buying taken to a whole new level, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have these shopping groups where somebody will go and buy 48 tins of cat food and then you distribute that amongst your friends because you're getting it for a low price. So this is just basically someone taking it to a new level.
Who's going to use 4,000? Who's going to send 4,000 letters? You know, unless it's a business. But
well, yeah. I mean, again, a great question.
yeah. Going back to the stamps anyway, the highest sale last month worldwide was actually for a collection of stamps. And it does say in the description, grandfather's collection. And this is an interesting point. And it's stated to have a catalogue value of £35,000 to £40,000. And it sold for £4,500. And I had a look through the pictures, and it did look quite an interesting collection, and there did look some nice stamps there. I didn't bother to work out whether that was an accurate value or not. But this same seller had only sold 19 items in total on eBay. That would worry me to spend £4,500 on someone who'd only sold 19 items. And yes, it had 100% feedback, but I don't know. And the other thing, when you looked at it a bit deeper, those 19 other items, most of them were grandfather's collection or auntie's collection. So either this person was very lucky and has a good family that collects stamps, or I hate to cast aspersions, but I wouldn't have spent £4,500 on that item, I have to say.
Purely because of the 19 item.
Yeah, because it's a lot of money to spend on eBay anyway. But I would want a top-notch recognised seller if I was going to spend that sort of money without actually seeing the stamps. Now, as I said, they've got 100% feedback, and I'm not saying there was anything wrong with this at all. It's just a personal observation. Further down the list, the second highest sale was 4,000 Australian postage stamps. So that seems strange, but there we go. And then after that, there was another collection of mint Greek stamps in 7 albums. And again, I had a quick look through. There's some nice items there. They were all mint, and it says mint not hinged as well. So I should imagine that had quite a high catalogue value. And it sold for about £1,700. The first, what I would say, sort of individual stamps, and it's not actually an individual stamp, it's a block of stamps, is the fourth highest seller at £1,600. And it's from Formosa, which is the old name for Taiwan, and a 50-cent stamp, but in a block of 18. Now, apparently, according to the description, this is the highest block of that particular stamp ever seen, and it is worth a lot of money. Obviously, because it's a block, I haven't been able to find a catalogue value for it, but I should imagine that is quite a valuable item. And unlike the top seller, this was from a dealership that had 17,000 items sold, all with 100% feedback. So for me, that would be a trusted dealer, and I would be more likely to spend a lot of money with someone like that than the first one. And the interesting thing with this particular dealer, not only did he have the fourth highest sale, he also had the 7th highest sale and the 8th highest sale as well. So he had a pretty good month in January. Well, whether that's a normal month for this dealer, I don't know. But just in those 3 items, he's made about £4,000.
Can you follow dealers on eBay?
Yes, you can.
You put them up as like your favourites, so whenever they put something on, you get an alert or something?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Whether that'd be something to do or not, I don't know. But as I said, it was the 4th, 6th and 7th highest sale. And actually, if you take out collections and the mint stamps, it was the 1st, 2nd and 3rd highest sale. So a good month for that dealer, and I would quite like to be in his shoes, really. However, we don't know how much he paid for those stamps. So.
Well, yeah, but you're referring to dealer. Do you think dealers are selling on eBay, or do you think it is dealers?
Yeah.
So it's not just individuals.
It's not just individuals. You can read the biopsy of the dealership, and it's 2 guys that have got together and set it up specifically for selling high quality stamps. But there are a lot of the big dealerships that sell on eBay as well as private individuals. So.
I mean, I guess if you think about it, if you go to a stamp auction with, let's say, Stanley Gibbons or eBay, it's exactly the same thing. One is sort of virtual on your computer. Another one is you can go to the event, or you can be a telephone buyer. But it is basically the same thing, isn't it?
It is.
And I guess the higher the value of the stamp, the more it would be in person with Stanley Gibbons or somebody like that.
Yes, and the difference is with Stanley Gibbons or companies like that, they know what they're talking about. and you know if they describe it as a good stamp, it will be a good stamp. Now, you can safeguard yourself on eBay by looking at feedback, by looking at in detail of the sort of items the dealer sells and some background to what they do. And in some cases, the security is just as good because they can be a member of the Philatelic Traders Society, which gives you a lot of security in that they are recognised stamp dealers. And there's a lot of those that sell on eBay. And there's also the Internet Philatelic Dealers Association, of which I'm a member. It gives you some guarantees of them being a legitimate stamp dealer. So there are a lot of safeguards on eBay. Yeah, if you're careful, then there's not much difference, as you say, between that and buying from Stanley Gibbons. Unless you can actually make it to the sale room, then it's a different process.
I just think when you mention eBay, you get one very distinct, yes, love eBay, I bought an XYZ, or no, won't touch it with the barge pole, I had a terrible experience.
I think it's like everything, isn't it? Buyer beware. You know, if you're careful and you put safeguards into place, like checking feedback, I won't spend a lot of money. I will buy from new sellers, but I won't spend a lot of money on someone who's only sold 10, 20 items. I know everyone's got to start somewhere, but when I started selling low item stuff because I recognised I wouldn't have bought £100 worth of stamps from someone who's never sold any before. So I expect other people to be the same. But you can only go on feedback, and as we've discussed, feedback can be fabricated. So again, you have to be careful. And when I'm buying big items or when I start using a new seller, I quite often look not just the number of feedback, but actually the comments as well, because that you can read it a fair bit into that. So there we are, £500,000. That's £500,000 worth of stamps sold last month on eBay. So eBay are doing not too badly out of us stamp collectors. But it also shows stamp collecting is still a thriving business. It's still, there's a lot of stamp collectors out there. There were nearly 50,000 items sold. And that's not 50,000 stamps. That could be, collections. It could be groups of stamps. So it's still a thriving community and one I enjoy being part of. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found it interesting. One thing we were talking about before we started today's video was that it'd be interesting to talk to anybody else who sells on eBay or who buys regularly on eBay. Maybe you can tell us about your experiences and what you sell or what you collect. So if you'd like to be interviewed for a podcast, my wife Sheila does her own podcasts, and her podcasts are more of interviewing people about their hobbies. So she would be very interested, and I'm sure you would like to hear from them.
Yes, I would love to have somebody come on my podcast. It's called All About You. And as Pete said, people talking about their travels, their hobbies, their passions. So I'm obviously learning a little bit more about the world of stamps, working with Pete on his podcast. So I would very much like to ask if anybody would like to be a guest on my podcast. You don't have to be collecting stamps for many, many years, whether you're just starting out. I would just love to have somebody be a guest on my podcast talking about their passion of stamp collecting, how they got started, etc. So if you fancy that, drop a note to Pete and we'll try and get that organised.
Yeah, leave a note in the comments and I'll put a link on there for you.
And because we're in Valencia, obviously we can record via Skype or Zoom. We'll work something out. So yeah, if anybody would like to be a guest, I would absolutely love to have you.
Great. Look forward to hearing from you. Okay, well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. Don't forget you can visit my online stores at eBay and Delcamp under the name of Ourdadsstamps, where I have over 2,000 items for sale. Please join us again in 2 weeks' time for another edition of Ourdadsstamps podcast.